When it comes to scary places, the desert might not be the first place that pops into your mind. After all, deserts are usually hot, dry, and well, pretty boring, right? But like any location, the desert can hold its share of horrors. And sometimes those horrors can really get under your skin. I'm the host, and today we're going to examine the top 3 creepy desert stories you should never experience. Viewer discretion is advised for this episode, as some of this episode may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this show, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. Number 3. Abandoned mine shaft. If you love old buildings and structures, then urban exploring might just be the hobby for you. Urban exploration, also known as urbex, is basically what it sounds like. It's the exploration of man-made structures in an urban environment that's typically abandoned. A lot of times these structures can be unsafe, but that doesn't stop many urban explorers from getting a glimpse inside these abandoned locations. Sometimes all they find is trash and peeling paint. Other times, they find something a little more sinister. In 2017, a group of friends decided to do a little bit of urban exploring of their own. Their destination was an abandoned mine shaft, located in the Mojave Desert near Barstow, California. The area is popular with urban explorers because of the town's rich mining history. During the 1800s, miners flocked to the area hoping to strike it rich. And even though the mines were mostly abandoned by the turn of the century, they remained a popular destination for prospectors. Today, however, the government has deemed the area unsafe and has posted warning signs at the entrances to the shafts. Despite the warnings, our group of explorers decided to head into the shaft anyway. What started off as an exciting adventure soon turned into a nightmare when the group heard strange noises coming from the tunnels. At first, they thought it was just the wind, but as they continued to explore, the noises began to get louder. Eventually, they heard what sounded like footsteps, heavy footsteps. The group began to panic and tried to make their way back to the entrance, but it seemed to be much further than they had anticipated. As the footsteps got closer, they found another tunnel and squeezed through a small opening, hoping to get away from whatever was pursuing them. They soon found themselves in a large cavern, and in the middle of the cavern was a pile of dirt. As they watched in disbelief, the dirt began to move, and a moment later, a massive creature emerged from the pile. The group screamed and ran as fast as they could for the opening, making it out just in time to see the creature slither back into the pile of dirt. To this day, nobody knows what the creature was, but the explorers claim that it was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Was it a wild animal of some kind? Perhaps a mutated lizard of some kind? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 2, desert stalker. Sometimes when people go camping, they like to rough it out in the wilderness with nothing but a tent, a sleeping bag, and a flashlight. Most of the time, camping trips are uneventful and go exactly according to plan. However, once in a while, campers will encounter something they weren't expecting. In 2006, a married couple decided to camp out in the desert near Bakersville, California. The couple had been planning the trip for weeks, and they were excited to finally get away from the hustle and bustle of city life. They set up their tent and made a small fire, and then settled in for the night. However, neither of them noticed a dark figure watching them from the bushes nearby. Throughout the night, the couple heard strange noises outside of their tent, but they just assumed it was just animals. However, in the morning after, of course, they were too scared to sleep. They unzipped the tent to the creepiest scene. All of their food and supplies had been scattered around the tent, and there were also strange markings left on the ground outside of the tent. The couple quickly packed up and got out of there, deciding that they didn't want to spend another minute in the area. They told the police about the incident, but no one ever figured out who or what was responsible. Could it have been a wild animal? An overly curious human? Let us know what you think. No. 1. Desert threat. There's nothing quite as relaxing as getting in your car after a long day and turning on the air conditioning. You get to just sit there and relax, knowing that in a few minutes you'll be home. Just don't do this if there are strangers with guns waiting for you in the desert. A person was driving down the highway near Blythe, California, when they realized that they needed to stop and use the restroom. There were no gas stations or convenience stores around, so they pulled off onto the side of the road and into the desert. As they were relieving themselves, they noticed a group of men staring at them from a distance. The person quickly finished and got back into their car and drove off. However, the men began to flag the person down and motioned for them to pull over. Though hesitant, the person did as they were told and rolled down their window. The men asked the person where they were headed and why they were in the area. The person lied and said that they were on their way to Las Vegas and had no idea how much longer it would take to get there. The men seemed satisfied with the answer, and after a few moments, they told the person to drive off. As the person was driving, however, they couldn't help but feel uneasy about the situation. Why were these strangers staring at them while they relieved themselves? Was it just a coincidence that they happened to be in the same place at the same time? The person tried to shake off the feeling, but it only got worse when they realized that the men had followed them for miles. The person decided to stop and confront the men, and that's when things took an even stranger turn. One of the men asked the person if they minded if he searched the vehicle, and the person agreed. The man began to search, and after a few moments, he turned to the person and said that they were free to go. The person thanked him and drove off. However, the person couldn't help but wonder what the men wanted with them. Why did they follow them for so long? What were they trying to do? Days later, the person decided to go to the police and tell them about the incident. The police took the person's information and let them know that they would be in touch if they learned anything. However, that was the last time the person heard anything about the case, and they still have no idea why they were targeted. However, the person did learn something about themselves a few months later. While going through some of their belongings, the person came across a photograph of their mother that had been taken when she was younger. And in the photo, she was with a group of men who looked very familiar. The person showed the photograph to their family members, and they were able to confirm that the men in the photograph were the same men who had stopped the person on the side of the road. It turns out that the person's mother was a member of a Mexican gang or cartel, and the men were most likely her old associates. But why were they stalking the person? Did they recognize the person from seeing them relieve themselves in the desert? Or were they targeting the wrong person altogether? Sadly, the person may never know the answer to that question. Which story was the creepiest to you? Which story do you think was scariest? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more content. Thanks for watching.